Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another in our ongoing series of Rallyware webinars. You may have seen toward the end of June, there was a press release put out about Rallyware launching their new incentives and recognition suite. So what we're going to focus on today is not necessarily what that suite consists of, but the effect that suite, the positive effects that suite has had for our customer base out there. I'm very excited to introduce to you two members of the Rallyware team who have been up to their elbows in incentives and recognition. The first who will kick off for us today is Dan O'Mara. He is our Vice President of Sales. And Christina Olson, she is in our Customer Success Group. And they've been working with customers both inside and outside of the direct selling industry who are leveraging the new incentives and recognition suite. And today we're going to focus on what they've seen I&R, as we affectionately call it, can do for distributors out there. So Dan, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Without further ado, Dan, kick us off, sir.
Thank you so much, Rich, and thank you everyone for joining today on this Wednesday afternoon. So we're really excited about what incentives and recognition and how this actually plays into our space so much. So what we're going to do is just kind of kick it off with some insights, things that we're seeing in the industry, but want to kind of share with everyone where these insights are really coming from. And as Rich mentioned, we had a press release that went out a while ago that kind of shared that Rallyware's Incentives Recognition Program. However, it has been up and running in various stages for quite a while. So it's great. So some of these insights that we're going to be sharing today are from our customers inside the direct selling industry and also outside of the direct selling industry. And it's great because there's, a lot of these that we can see here, a lot of big tech is really looking at how do we drive distributed workforces, how do we incentivize those that have a limited amount of time? So really, they're gleaning a lot of great knowledge from the direct selling industry, and we're going to bring that into our conversations today. So that being said, some of the things that we're seeing out there today. So first of all, kind of this idea around launching alternate programs beyond traditional incentive plans. So again, the thought process here is, right, we all have, great long-term incentive trips, car packages that are fantastic for our leaders. But again, what we're learning to do now is starting to look at kind of that move the middle, the large masses of people. How do we reach them, engage them in a much quicker way? So again, companies are looking at requesting a more agile programs, talking maybe 90 days to as little as 1 week. How can they spin those up very quickly with a very focused approach on a specific topic or a specific, maybe a very specific product launch, whatever that may be, again, but being able to be more agile in their programs. Which again ultimately ties back to more flexibility around program design and delivery. Design from the standpoint of visualization. How can we quickly throw up leaderboards? How can we quickly throw up trackers? And delivery. How can we subset maybe a small segment of our field to focus on one specific topic? So again, a lot more flexibility, a lot more agile approach to the programs themselves. And one of the things that we are going to focus a lot on today is this focus on rewarding smaller breadcrumbs of activities. There's a great article out recently about, incentivizing those baby steps. And I'm glad to see that a lot of organizations are looking for that. Next, automation of to-dos to provide next steps accurate next steps in the approach, and then also taking into account the field's personal goals and incentivizing those steps. So maybe a bit more of a dynamic program where we're going to get a lot more emotional connection into that approach. So these are what we're seeing. If you want, please go ahead and drop down into maybe the comments or questions area, maybe some things that you guys are seeing out there that we can share with everybody on the call. Again, these are what we're seeing both inside and outside of direct selling. I think it's a good approach. So we're kind of taking this stand, and we feel that this is a very strong approach, is that a guided incentive program with automated recognition alerts to participants and leaders will drive more long-term behaviors than really most anything else that we can do. So again, it's a big statement, but I think that throughout this, we'll all be able to start to see maybe why this makes sense. So Rallyware has done a lot of surveys over the last couple of years. And this recent survey with over 10,000 participants was primarily focused around incentives and recognition. And it was really interesting insights. So right out of the bat, 82.5% strongly agree that they don't have the actionable understanding of exactly how do I reach this incentive goal. We might know what the terms and conditions are. We might know, okay, you need to hit this number, but how do they hit that original number in the first place? So again, a lot of that approach is kind of those breadcrumbs or baby steps that we heard that people are looking for. 78% strongly agree that inclusion of training would make obtaining their goals a lot easier. Again, kind of ties back to the first one of understanding the action. What do I do? How do I do it? That approach. And then 61.6% agree that they would not likely engage in a long-term incentive program. And that's talking about greater than 6 months. So very interesting survey results, and some follow-up questions to some of those things were, why would you not? Things like that. And a very, very interesting insights. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to Christina Olson here real quickly to kind of talk about, from her standpoint, why these guided IR programs are so important.
Great. Thanks, Dan. We've seen just, great success with people sort of trying different things and leaning into shorter programs, title programs, all different kinds of things. And given the fact that, with everything that's happening in the world, being remote and being globally distributed is one of the reasons that you need these strong recognition programs. People are not always in the same place. Teams are spread across countries, states, oceans. And so this is a way to sort of bring those teams together. And one of the things that when we're talking to clients or talking to people about I&R in general, is that really there's a lot of time spent up front when you're thinking about how you're building your program and how you're structuring it. And by having a well-structured program, we've seen increases in performance as much as 44%. And some of those things that we've seen are, instead of taking a year-long consistency program, maybe they're breaking it down into quarterly consistency programs. And so you can achieve, even if you hit just one of those quarters, you achieve more if you hit two, you achieve even more if you hit 3 or 4. So, but if something in your life changes or you need to do something, you can adapt with that. Also, short-term promotion incentives, like Dan said, sometimes as short as a week, really thinking about that in your company's path towards success, and thinking about the cadence and the rhythm by which your company needs to have your sales force do things, giving them these different kinds of programs gives them the breadcrumbs to get them to learn behaviors that they'll just do over and over again.
Thanks, Christina. And collectively across the surveys, organizations, a lot of conversations, the kind of mindset around this type of a solution is really what has brought itself kind of to this forefront. And we feel this diagram does a pretty good job of kind of explaining the overall thought process and solution that we feel the market is really calling out for. And in this case, you see on the left, Mary and John, they both have their own personal objectives. In this case, Mary aspires to be a great leader. John's excited about earning some extra money. And throughout that process, we see and we take into account their thought processes and then assign those to their specific goals, whether that's a corporate goal or whether it's a personal goal. And then the idea that those baby steps or those breadcrumbs would be able to then help lead them from into their next set of activities. So again, for Mary, how great leaders inspire other people, their teams, and John is learning about lead generation, for example. And then that plays into their performance. And what's great about this idea and this kind of solution, this mindset is that it's not just one way. It's not just starting with Mary and her goals and then working one way, but also the opposite way, working with performance and then spinning it back and saying, hey, look, here's your next step. You're halfway to your goal. And we know this is important because we've taken into account your personal thought processes, your personal goals into this overall. So the mindset collectively from, a lot of interviews and customers and just in general is leading to this thought process around solution where, again, we're taking an individual, finding out where they are, provide those breadcrumbs, and then let that introduce that performance. So again, if anybody has any thoughts on that, again, on the questions, drop in the questions. You agree, you disagree with a solution base like this, we would love to hear your thought processes on that as well. So, Christina, kick that back over to you.
Great. This is when we were thinking about putting together this presentation, we really wanted to be able to provide you with some best practices so that as you're thinking about your incentive programs and thinking about what you might be planning for in 2022, you could have some really concrete things to take into consideration. So we've made you a list of, 6 or 7 different best practices, and I'm going to walk through them quickly. So we really think of these as smart I&R programs. These are practices that if you put them all into practice, you're going to have a really well-rounded, smart I&R program, meaning it's doing more than just putting a flyer in front of your field or your consultants. It's going to give them information on how to succeed. So one of those first things is having a one-stop place for people to go. You're creating it at the home office in one place, and your consultants are going to that same place and tracking and seeing their success and engaging all right in one digital hub, either on their phone or their iPad or their, tablet or their computer. One of the things we learned from our research is that showing people information that's relevant to them is really important. So using the information that you have about your users and displaying programs that are relevant to that user. So instead of them, a brand new user seeing a bunch of leader programs that might be more than they're ready to take on in their first 90 days, you're only showing them a couple of things. You're showing them the weekly sales promotion, and maybe you're showing them their getting started program so they can stay focused and pay attention to the things that matter to them and their success at the moment they're in their business. This is one of the things I think that's really important is taking an individual's goals and allowing them to put them into play. So having a way for the user to say, what do I want to achieve? And letting them set those goals. But the way you structure the program ensures that those goals are going to tee up to the overall business goal. The other thing we find really important is allowing leaders not only to set their personal goals, but have visibility and be able to see what their team is doing. So I'm doing well and my team is doing well. And how do I how do I have access to that so that I can do some things? I can reward people. I can have little shout outs. I can coach people based on the fact that I can see that information and it's tied to everyone's goals. The other thing we think is really important is we're using this word SMART because these are not just notifications to everybody, using notifications that trigger activities at the right time for people to reach their maximum return on the work that they're doing. So they're getting a notification that says, hey, you're 10% away from getting this next prize or earning this next trip or whatever the case may be, but using those notifications to do that. And also using notifications to help nudge people who, may not have started yet and giving them words and encouragement and most importantly, triggering an activity that's going to help them take action to achieve. And then really thinking about a holistic approach. What is your company's overall goals? What is the message and rhythm that you have? In January, you're focusing on recruiting. Maybe after conference, you're focused on sales of a new launch. So taking that into consideration and using that to change behavior with small, focused, short-run incentive programs. So it really gives them an opportunity to focus on what they want. The other thing that's great about shorter focused programs is it provides an opportunity for anyone that improves their business to be recognized and celebrated. You don't have to be the biggest leader or the best salesperson. Sometimes in these shorter focused programs, you're able to really compartmentalize groups of people based on their goals and let them see themselves succeeding against those goals.
Christina, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that the surveys did pull out was almost 50% of the participants that answered the question said that one of the drawbacks they see is they don't feel like they actually have a chance to win. And I think that isolating what you're talking about here with these shorter focused programs and being able to spin up multiple different ones at one time really does open that door for more people to actually win and be celebrated. What we wanted to do is just take a couple of slides here and just talk through some of the data that Rallyware's analytics team has been able to pull open, bring together, and just kind of share where this really kind of comes into play. Now, some of the numbers here we can see, for example, the more engaged the user was on the platform, and the more tasks that they completed. In this case, we're using kind of a generic word, task, but really those breadcrumbs, those micro activities that we want people to take. And the more that they engaged, of course, the more activity they drove. And the higher the sales that went up. And we'll dive into that a little bit more on this next slide. But what we really found to be overall interesting in this thought process is that those activities were a wide range of different things. For example, hey, just come into the platform and watch this short encouragement video by someone on the leadership team. And it didn't really necessarily drive a specific activity or a specific business outcome, but it got the program to be more top of mind. And it allowed that user to get back into that experience, back into that environment. And by kind of going back to what Christine was saying, utilizing those smart notifications and taking into account a field member, consultant, distributor, whatever they're in taking their personal goals or based on survey questions that are asked to them, gathering that information, and you make those notifications relevant to them, they're much more likely to engage and hop back in. And once you have them back in, then they do one activity, then they do another, and maybe that's where the business activity is in that side of things. So again, we can see 2x higher growth, also increase quarterly sales by 12% by those that just took one action. So we can start to see this over time. And that's really what we are showing here in this slide, is taking into account cohorts that participated in programs previously, and then cohorts that the same cohorts that were engaged in programs before and after the use of the smart notifications, the incentive programs as a whole, centralized view to see where they and their team are doing, and allowing leaders that opportunity to really engage with their field, recognize them, and keep inspiring them to do those great things. So as you can see, again, we've had to normalize this, so we're using a term sales points. But you can see, say, for example, the average cohort that did 1 to 24 activities before the introduction of a new thought process in incentives and recognition, they'd have sales performance of about 250 sales points. After the started to get in, start moving, start driving, you can see that jumped 149 sales points, quite a big difference. And then as we start to move to the right, you can see that gap really is increasing. From doubling. What we've realized, if we can get them past 24 activities, they're worth twice as much. They've generated twice as much in revenue as those that didn't. They generated about twice as much from the original cohort group there. So again, you can see how this grows as they stay more engaged. But the thing that really struck out to us as really kind of inspiring is the fact that these two middle groups, their before sales were actually lower than the first group. And so what we found very exciting in this thought process is that here we are taking individuals that were, let's call it performing at a lower rate or underperforming those in that first group, is that all of a sudden now they are greatly overproducing compared to that first group. So it's a really, really exciting, very exciting to see. And again, this is across multiple different companies, multiple different incentive programs, and even inside and outside of the industry as a whole. So it's really exciting to see those numbers. And also what these findings are really telling us is that there's this strong power of visualization, simply being able to see what is happening in and throughout the incentive program. Where am I at today? What do I need to do tomorrow? And how long will it take me to maybe reach my goal at this current rate? And then, of course, utilizing those smart notifications to drive people back into the program, keep them back in track, and driving more interaction between upline and downline when they have a specific goal in mind. And again, giving the ability for the upline to see exactly what that downline member is doing is very powerful. It helps them, of course, isolate who they should help work with, and who they might be wasting some time on. Things along those lines. So, Christina, I throw it over to you. From there, you go.
Yeah. So we just wanted to sort of summarize this by sharing a quote that we recently found from Stuart, who's the president of Manat, where, he really says, having to recognize and reward behaviors that will lead to leadership down the road. They may be baby steps, but we know they're the behaviors that they can repeat and repeat. And that's what this all comes down to, is creating incentives and recognition programs that will allow your consultants to achieve daily successes and repeat behaviors that you want them to do, so that you can create a path for them to success. And baby steps always get you to the end of the finish line. So that's really what we hope. We've given you some ideas and tips on how to do that. And now we would like it to open up to questions. If you've got anything you want to chat about, ask us some questions, toss them in the Q&A box, and we'd be happy to spend some time talking with you.
So thank you very much, Christina. Thank you, Dan. I enjoyed it immensely. I learned a lot. Got a couple comments, got a couple questions that hopefully you can address as we close out today's session. So the first one comments on the length of an incentive program, right? They said it sounds like incentives are leaning away from long to shorter. How short have you seen people use and make an incentive effective?
Yeah. So, Dan, I'll start and then feel free to hop in there. We've seen people run incentives as short as a week, but typically that week-long program isn't in isolation. It might be 4 weeks of programs that run kind of over the course of a month. And each of those programs kind of focuses on a different item. And that's how we've seen some of those short ones really, really be successful, is they really think through the whole month, and we create programs that support those activities. Otherwise, it's generally a month to 3 months is kind of what we've seen be successful. Because again, it's about giving people an opportunity to have repeating behaviors.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. I think one of the things to add to that are the flash pan flash pan incentives where, we're talking about 2 weeks. We're going to drive a specific product and we're just going to spin up the program real fast, drop it out there, and then, daily leaderboard updates out to the field to keep everyone excited, and then kill it after 2 weeks, just to kind of spark some excitement, drive some things along those lines. So I think that 2 weeks is what I've seen on my side as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next question talks about, we've seen a lot of incentives now that maybe aren't so results based, right? $1,000 PV, 3 recruits, that kind of thing, but more action based. Talk to 3 people, hand out 100 flyers. What have you seen in the interactions we've had with folks doing incentives on results based incentives versus action based incentives?
One of the things that we've seen in those cases is, on a platform like Rallyware, there's lots of ways to have incentives and recognition. And for those kinds of action-based things, we're seeing more recognition for them. So for the people who have achieved X benchmark, they've, gone in and checked their contact base and they've talked to 3 people a day, every day for a week. They're going to get a badge. They're going to show up on a leaderboard. It's not necessarily that there is an actual prize, but it's driving activity through being seen and being acknowledged.
Okay. So new one just popped up. I'm interested to hear both of you comment on this. Mm-hmm. Can you give an example of a successful 3-month incentive program? What's been a reward that people seem to really love and want to run for?
I've personally been working with a lot of organizations, both inside but outside of direct selling. And so I'll give a kind of an example there, and then Christina, maybe you jump internally here. But one of the things that we've really seen, I've seen is that what the reward that they're looking for is that excessive amount of recognition. A good example of this one is one that we're running with Salesforce. And, they give away some things, PlayStations and Xboxes and things like that. But the thing that they really drove, a lot of excitement for them was the ability for this employee to be highlighted and have a 15-minute segment at Dreamforce. And so that one drove a lot more excitement than a lot of the other programs, or a lot of the other rewards. So it was really actually pretty interesting. That was done over a 60-day campaign. Great results from it, and it really helped drive some of their ISV partners. But again, that was just, again, going back to the reward. The reward for that particular one was literally just that very, very over excessive amount of recognition that individual got. So Christina, maybe you can talk specifically about the industry.
So I've got a couple of examples.
Mm-hmm.
One ties right into what you're saying, Dan. It's all about the recognition. And so, I've seen people have, short 3-month incentives where the reward was having a training session on stage at conference where they could teach people what they do and help them be successful. So that plays directly into that recognition and getting that spotlight put on them. Other things, one of the interesting things we've seen is sometimes companies create options for their consultants. So, you could achieve the benchmark over the 3 months and you could choose from, do you want some more product? Do you want an Amazon gift card? Do you want this swag, right? So giving people a choice, not 10,000 things to choose from, but 3 or so, 2 or 3, lets them sort of put their eggs in the basket that for what they want to run for, what they want to achieve. And that's something that I've seen be really successful where there's more than one option. And sometimes it's product, sometimes it's, kind of a cash reward. And then, it might be, something else.
I want to add quickly onto that, Christina, because that's a brilliant point, is that inside of, without talking too much about the Rallyware product, but inside of Rallyware gives you the ability to survey your field ahead of time. And then based on those surveys, you can actually have them participate in that, in say a segmented program where they get to select that prize. And again, by doing that, it's connecting that more emotional connection to the end prize itself. It's not just the company set that this is the prize. I have my say into it as well. So excellent point, Christina. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah,
that's intriguing. Yeah, let me name my prize and then go run for it, Dan. I like that survey. So here's an interesting one. Have you seen people use incentives to gather information to develop future programs?
I mean, that's one of the things that is so great about having a flexible and quick to spin up incentive and recognition program is that you can run an incentive, you can see what's working and not working, frankly, and you can tweak it. So that's the nice thing, again, about some of these shorter programs. If you're running for a year, you're kind of locked into that program. If you're running for 2 weeks, a month, or 3 months, you've got a window and an opportunity to see what's working, do some quick analytics, and then switch it up. And so we've seen people change the benchmark. We've seen people change the prize or add a new prize. Those are the things that are so simple to do when you have a really flexible platform and you've really thought about the things that you want people focused on. So if you want them focused on recruiting and the first prize package you come up with isn't working, you can quickly turn it on a dime to do something different.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that quickly is just the ability to survey throughout the program as a whole. Quick scale 1 to 10, how are you guys liking this program so far? Those types of things. So I think that allows for great feedback as well.
And we've got one more as we're wrapping up today. And I sort of kept this one to the end because it speaks to one of Rallyware's core competencies. So the question is, have you seen people within their incentives and how they announce them or how they utilize them across the sales force? Have you seen people not only just explain what the incentive is, but actually train toward that incentive?
Yeah, I'll take the first stab. So realistically, I think kind of goes back to that to a thought process around baseball when I was a kid. You know, I went up to the bat, swung, strike, look over my coach, and he says, "Hey, you got to keep your eyes on the ball as it comes through." And then you do that, and then you hit the ball. That piece of training that I got at that point, you know, stays with you forever because of the fact that you're linking that training so close to the actual incentive, the reward itself. And that's how really that behavior is driven. So not only training towards the end goal, but training towards those micro activities, those breadcrumb activities, I think is probably the most critical thing that can be done.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, linking, to-dos or training or notifications towards the small step that you can do on a daily basis to achieve the benchmark that you've set, that goal that you've set for yourself, is really kind of where a lot of the self-satisfaction and self-confidence comes from. Is I did this thing, I saw a result. I'm going to do it again. Oh, I saw another result. Oh, somebody just sent me I succeeded. I got a notification that said, try this to get even more of a result, right? So I think, if you can put training, tasks, to-dos, whatever you want to sort of leverage at that point, and pull them together, I think is how, you kind of combined training and activities together to create success.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for not only your time today and insightful thoughts, conversation, and what you've seen across customers and within companies, but actually for taking the time to put together the deck, sort of coalesce your thoughts and share those with us today. So I thank everybody for attending, and we will follow up as soon as we get the recording generated and send it in your direction. But if there are any additional questions, comments, inquiries, don't hesitate to address those to rich@rallyware.com. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Dan. And I hope everybody out there has a great afternoon.